at the top of her field of going after major causes and being proven right in every single case. And yet, wouldn't you think that 2020, 60 Minutes, Geraldo, Bill O'Reilly, someone in the American media would be interested in inviting her on, challenging her, scrutinizing her documentation, inviting on someone that will offer a legitimate debate and challenge? But that will not happen. Because when it does, the American public could then be exposed to the truth. And what happens when you let that genie out of the bottle? The truth. The American public are smart and sensitive and trusting. It is my personal position that these documents show that the American public has been misled. And I hold this hope that the editors and the journalists associated with Science Magazine, the original publishers that legitimized and codified the entire war on AIDS, will re-examine this, and in their good judgment, realizing that new information has been brought to light that must then displace the old information, that we will then begin to see Robert Gallo and other people who have not been offered a challenge be given the challenge that they should, and have an opportunity to defend themselves, have an opportunity to present their points of view, have an opportunity to challenge Janine Roberts. That's what healthy journalism is about. Your point.
Gary, what you're saying is actually brought out. So I wanted to find out what research was unable to be done because these papers were accepted. I went back to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and their records. I found over 100 papers on poppers, on amyl nitrites, linking it to AIDS. Over 100. One famous doctor, Dr. Blattmer, did an official history of the CDC, Center for Disease Control. And in his history, he talks about the day they announced it was a virus. And he says that day we were having a workshop in the evening, and all over the building people had to rewrite their papers to say it was a virus because they were pointing towards poppers. I mean, it was a very logical thing because they had to find a drug that was being used in the gay community. So he didn't need a drug that was being used by both communities, heterosexual and gay community, because the heterosexuals weren't going down with AIDS. And it was poppers was uniquely the drug that was used in gay sex because it relaxes the smooth muscles, making anal sex more pleasurable. But it also oxidizes the blood and makes it impossible for the blood to carry oxygen. I mean, I've got friends in the gay community, and they told me after 2 weeks on poppers, they started getting blackouts. And this is taking poppers frequently. This is breathing poppers, dance floors being sprayed with poppers. Basically because their blood can't carry oxygen, so their mitochondria are starved. What happens? You get cell loss. What happens? You get wasting disease. You get people starting to look like skeletons. Why? Because they can't get oxygen to their cells. Now, when I said earlier about how fungi test positive in the HIV test, just think what I was talking about. It is a respiratory tract that takes in inhaled drugs. Studies in Vancouver, London, LA, all over the place, New York, have all shown 90% correlation with poppers. But it's multi-drugs, 90% correlation also with marijuana, but 60% correlation with crack, cocaine, drugs. What have we got? Damaged cells throughout the whole respiratory tract, not able to absorb oxygen, fungi coming in and devouring the damaged cells. HIV test positive. This is, but I went back on this, it's because finding there was frauds in the HIV papers, you then go, but AIDS really existed. People are dying of AIDS, so what was going on? And that's what took me
discourage anyone, and wouldn't it be irresponsible to take their medication, but it's which medication and for what conditions and under what way. I mean, tell a diabetic not to take type 1 and type 2 diabetes, not to take their insulin, that could kill them. But you don't tell a diabetic to take a Prozac to help them with their diabetes. So I believe it's the medical paradigm and the drugs offered have been mismanaged and completely wrong. Well, I didn't find anywhere that there was any statistically significant diagnosis of AIDS within the normal gay population. But in the small 2 to 3% of the fast track population, yes. And you don't find AIDS in the normal heterosexual community. But in the intravenous drug users, you do. Why? They're both immune depressive in their lifestyle. But then if you say it's in the immune system, well, do you have a model in Africa? Yes. I've done 5 multi-award winning documentaries on AIDS, the latest AIDS Inc. And we have over 30 different places in Africa filmed in these documentaries. There's one very revealing comment by a physician who's a specialist in tropical disease, and he says that he was taken over an orphanage where the children were all AIDS orphans. And yet when he gave them the medicines for their diseases, if they had tuberculosis that you mentioned, if they had malaria, if they were malnourished and gave them good food, clean water, and a nice environment to be in, they reversed and became healthy. Well, how can they be helping people in Africa by cleaning up their environment? How can I be helping overcome this deadly virus with lifestyle modification? If it's this virus that they say is so destructive that no drug has been ever able to kill it, it's too powerful against the drugs, hides in the T cells and everything else, then we have had, in my opinion, the greatest medical fraud in history coming from the entire establishment, in which case now we have to ask well-intentioned men and women in science, medicine, and healthcare to evaluate the evidence, examine the evidence, and then make your conclusions, whatever they may be. Manette Loudon is here. We're going to do something now in this part of I wish to make it known that there are now more than 2,000 individuals who challenge the HIV equals AIDS equals death hypothesis. Some of these are the most respected scientists in the world, including multiple Nobel Prize winners. On the one hand, the mainstream medical community can go to 100,000 physicians and say, but we all support HIV causes AIDS and nothing else, and that's it. And then we have to ask them, where's your proof? Where's your scholarship? Well, we have thousands of people who believe that they're wrong over there and that they haven't done their homework. And how did these thousands of people come to be? Because they actually took the time to examine the evidence for themselves and not be propagandized. They didn't jump in with the group and become lemmings in a consensus. These are the best and brightest. And that's why they are dissidents, because they chose not to be spoon-fed anymore. Like Nobel Prize winner Kary Mullis, when they looked for the evidence was not there to allow them to continue to support this hypothesis. I will now read you verbatim quotes from some of the leading scientists in the world and their documentation and qualification, including leading virologists who have a point of view. Not everybody can be here today. We are limited in space and distance. And first we want to acknowledge the outstanding work of David Crow of the Alberta Reappraising AIDS Group and its thousands of members. Also we have Dr. Giraldo here, also formerly director of that same group, who has given us a statement that he also supports the work of Janine Roberts. I spoke with David